Welcome to Grounded Engagement, Liberating Leadership. I'm Kristina Katayama. This show exists because I believe the leaders we need right now go beyond the tools. They have the relational courage to grow through honest engagement and be collaborative in the face of tension. Today's guest is Ken Snyder. Ken spent 30 years in industry, mainly in manufacturing. And since 2015, Ken has been the executive director of Shingo Institute, a program of the Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University, where he sits at the rare intersection of rigorous research and messy real world practice. He spent years studying what makes organizations excellent and the key differences that predict whether that excellence climbs or declines over time. This is exactly the kind of honest conversation this show is built for. Welcome, Ken. So good to
Thank
have you here.
Thanks for having me, Christina. It's an honor.
Yeah. So I'm so glad we had a little bit of a chance to talk earlier. You started to tell me a story about organizations that reach the Shingo Prize and then decline or keep getting better. What's the difference that makes the difference?
Well, let me start off with a little bit of history. So the Shingo Institute was formed in 1988, so going on 40 years pretty soon. I'm the fourth executive director of the Shingo Institute. But after about the first, let's say, 15 or so years, we noticed a trend that probably more of the recipients of the Shingo Prize, the performance deteriorated after receiving the prize, and there were a few, not an insignificant number, but a few anyway, that kept getting better and better. And what we wanted to do is understand what the difference was between the ones that kept getting better and better versus those that were unable to sustain their improvement. We talk about continuous improvement. You'd like to think it's continuous and it continues on, right?
Right.
So, we did a research study. We looked at all of the different recipients, but primarily dove deep into the ones that kept getting better and better, and what was different about them versus the ones that couldn't sustain their improvement efforts. And what we noticed, the first thing we noticed was the focus on behaviors. So the first realization was, and I'll give an example of what I mean by this, is visiting one of the companies that clearly was still getting better and better year over year after receiving the Shingo Prize. And one of the things that they had achieved is they'd gone a few years without it's a manufacturing operation. They'd gone many years without any kind of lost time or any kind of injury, nothing to report to OSHA. And we asked them, what is it that allows you to get such great results? And they said, well, we really don't worry about the results. We look at the behaviors. And so they started listing off some of the things the behaviors that they looked at. They said, if there's a safety issue, do people report it? And we reward them for reporting it. And if it's reported, how quickly is it taken care of? And they had two different standards. One was, if it's something that the team could just take care of, they just did it. And how long did it take them? And the expectation was that they do it within a day. And, and often the answer was yes. So they measured how quickly it was. If it required some sort of engineering support, how long did it take them? Their standard was a week. And so they measured how quickly the safety issues reported by the team members were addressed. They said, if we focus on those behaviors, then we don't have to worry about what happens later because we're making sure that people are safe, and those things that might injure people, we address them, we prevent, by addressing those, we prevent people from getting hurt. So that's why we don't really have to worry about recordables, is because we measure the actions that prevent people from being hurt. And that we heard that story over and over again with other organizations that kept getting better. Not only did they prevent problems and focus on preventing problems, but they measured the behaviors or actions. And so we put it in, we call it an insight in the way we explain the story. So insight number one was ideal results require ideal behaviors. The behaviors are leading indicators. The results are lagging indicators. The behaviors or actions are the causes. The results are the effects. So they're focusing on the prevention, if you will, the behaviors, the actions, and measuring those things and rewarding and training people to do things that would help prevent. The second thing we noticed is that within those organizations, there was a lot of, within all of the organizations, all the Shingo Prize recipient organizations, there was clarity of purpose. But in the organizations that kept getting better and better, it was clear that the people understood the purpose, emotionally bought into the purpose. It was something that was meaningful to their lives, and so when they came to work, they felt like they're working for a cause, if you know what I mean. And in other places where it deteriorated, they could say, "Well, the company's purpose is such and such, and that's okay." But not sure leadership really believes in it, and so we I would say, and it's maybe a good purpose too. But what do you mean by not believing it? Well, they give us examples of things like, if the purpose is this, we should be doing this over here, but we do that instead. And we point this out and they say, well, no, you just do it the way we've always done it, or do it the way the system makes you do it, or whatever. And they'd get a little jaded because the leaders were telling them to do something that was not consistent with the purpose.
So can I ask you something about that right
Yeah.
there? So what I'm hearing is that attention rises between the stated purpose and then the behavior or
Yes.
the
Yes.
procedure, and when someone brings that conflict up, right? It's like, no, don't worry about it, just keep doing it the way, and there's no actually connecting with or addressing the alignment or misalignment between the purpose and the
Correct.
action that they're being asked to do.
Yeah.
And so then that's where they lose their belief in the purpose, is when
No,
that
don't lose.
contradiction shows up.
They don't lose their belief in the purpose. They stop trusting the leadership of the organization,
Ah, got it.
is what we noticed.
Mhm.
So they say, meaning the people that built the system that made it do the wrong thing, the wrong behavior, the leaders of the organization who built that system and make us do it this way. They don't buy into the purpose. Otherwise, they'd make it easy for us to do the right thing instead of making it easy for us to do the wrong thing and hard to do the right thing.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
so
Mhm.
our second insight was purpose and systems drive behaviors. So people know what the right purpose is. They know what the right behavior should be that would align with that purpose in most cases, and they can use it as a filter to decide, I should do this because our purpose is this. They can make those kind of calculations in their own head, and that drives a lot of really good behaviors. But sometimes it's just too hard to do the right thing because the system makes it easy to do the wrong thing and hard to do the right thing. And so when you get all of that aligned, you get the purpose and the systems that make it easy to do the right thing, and people know what the right thing is, and they buy into it and they understand it. Then they keep getting better and better because they can get closer and closer to that purpose. And the third thing that we found is when we asked the organization about why did you do this? Why did you do that? The things they changed. Why did you do those things that you changed? We got a number of consistent replies to those why questions. We started collecting those, and we formed them into we call principles. We use the term principle to describe it. And I like the way that the people who developed the model, because I wasn't part of the team then, I like the way they purposefully wrote the principles in a way that has an action verb to start with and then a topic. So, for example, one of the principles is respect every individual. So the topic is is the action verb is respect. The topic is who do you respect? It's every individual.
Another question as I'm listening to you, right? You have so much experience in the manufacturing industry as a leader, and then so much experience doing this research on companies in your work for the Shingo Prize. And if you were to evaluate yourself as a leader, right? If you could go take this information that you learned later and go back in time to uh, um, evaluate you for the Shingo Prize, what would you say?
I would, can I rephrase that a little bit?
Yeah, sure.
I'll rephrase it. What I wish I knew then that I know now.
Got it. Okay.
Is that okay? And I would
Yeah.
say there's three big things that I wish I knew then that I didn't know then, but some of which I kind of learned through the hard way, bad experiences and doing things the wrong way and so on. So I will say first is the principles. Being able to articulate why we do the things that we do, or even understanding what they are, so I could have not had to learn it the hard way by doing something wrong. And I'll just give one quick example of I lived through Industry 3.0. If for those who know what that means, that's the automation when we started automating things in factories. And I bought into the idea that we were having a quality problem with a particular equipment and with operators running it, and it was just a difficult step in our process. And we decided to try to automate it. And we didn't fix the fundamental underlying problems. And a lot of people out there are going to say, no, you don't automate a bad process. You got to figure out what's wrong with it. Yeah, I learned that. But I learned that when you automate a bad process, all you do is you create a lot more bad product a lot more efficiently. And so automation in and of itself is not a good thing. And we had to go back to doing things manually before we fixed the process, and it worked much better after that. We never even during my tenure there, we never ended up trying to automate it again. We just kept doing it manually, and it was working great. So there's a principle that we say in the Shingo model, focus on process. Focus on process in this case is fix the problem in the process before you do anything else to it, like automate it. And
I mean,
so
it sounds like this is really important right now with all of the
Oh,
change
oh
that's
yeah, oh yeah. And some people think AI is going to be their salvation if you want to use AI, or if you have any other, digitalization or whatever. No, you can't automate a bad process. It's still a bad process, and AI still, I do a little test with AI. I do one of my tests of the different AI services is write a 2-page biography of Shigeo Shingo. I know the family, I know his history, I've read all of his books. I know a lot more about Shingo, for example, than is out there on the web. And there's a lot of junk out there about Shingo, things that are not true or things that people said he said, but he didn't say and stuff like that. And so I just say, can they filter the good content from the bad content? No, they can't. It's just out there and it's available. And so, and do they get the whole picture? Do they even get a rounded picture of him? No. And it's like, okay, it still has its limitations. It can do some amazing things like write 2-page papers just like that, but that doesn't mean it's going to be accurate or, verified. And so I just think we have a lot of bad information, and you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. You put good stuff in, you get good stuff out. And right now we have a mix of the two, and we need to be careful about which is the good stuff and which is the bad stuff. So to me, it's the same lesson. And, we automated a process that I shouldn't have automated. We shouldn't have automated. It was my decision, but we shouldn't have done it. And we learned a lesson the hard way and spent a lot of money that was just ended up being wasteful. And I think the same will continue to be true of humankind as long as they don't focus on the process and getting the process right first.
Mhm.
So, um, I'll go. So there's the principles. There's a lot of principles I wish I would have that I wish the model would have existed because it would have helped me a lot in understanding what to do and also being able to explain to the people that I worked with why we need to do it this way.
And if the model had existed and, uh, at that time, what would you have needed as a leader to recognize that?
Well, let me back up and go over the two other things. I said three things.
Okay.
So let me
Yes,
go
you
back
did.
and do those. And then I think your question applies to all three topics. Okay.
Okay,
So
great.
the second thing is the focus on behaviors. I will admit that I understood the concept of error prevention, or pokeyoke, as they say in Japanese. I understood the context of it. It's incidentally a word that was created by Shingo, which I didn't know at the time, even though I knew what the word was. Um, and but I didn't focus on behaviors nearly as much as I could have or should have. And I was more of a reactive leader who would see results and then have to react to it to try to fix a problem as opposed to prevent the problem from ever happening. And I would say that my lack of focus on behaviors was probably something I could have done a lot better. And the third thing that I would say is I understood how systems drove behaviors. I didn't understand why systems often did not work. And I would say in one of the big aha moments I had as executive director of the Shingo Institute was sitting in one of our conferences listening to an executive from one of the companies using the Shingo model talk about how they got their systems to work all the time and went through these, essential elements. And I'm sitting there going through, and I've had in my mind one of the systems that I had helped develop in one of my companies that didn't work, and I never could figure out why it didn't work. But we had a problem. We were trying to make something better, and it never got better. And 20 years later, I'm sitting in a conference, and when he brings up his presentation, I start immediately thinking back to that system that didn't work. And I don't know why I did, but it must have been bugging me for 20 years because all of a sudden I'm going to go, okay, our system didn't do that. Nope. Our system did that for sure, but didn't do that and didn't do that and didn't do that. And I go, hmm, I could have done a lot better if I'd have known this, how to build and how to design a system so that you can make sure it's functioning properly and driving the right behaviors and making it difficult for people to do the wrong behaviors. And I didn't understand a lot of that, and I wish I would have. So those are my three things. The principles, behaviors, and systems, I would say, are areas where I can look back and say, I wish I had known this then. So now back to your question.
My underlying question is, how would you, as a leader at that time in your development, first of all, even, mm, seek, assistance or consulting or learning, um, to develop as a leader? How would you know, start there? And then secondly, recognize, oh, this, this makes sense. This is what I need. And the humility that it takes to learn, right?
Well,
As a leader in front of everybody.
you always think your decisions are correct, but you make what you think is the best decision. Therefore, you think it's correct. I think there's a just part of human nature. But it was clearly, and I'll go back to the system that didn't work, and I never could get it to work right, no matter what I knew to do at the time. Because it wasn't working, I was open to learning and studying and trying to figure it out. And I'd even studied other things over time and had never figured it out. I had even, read books on systems thinking and how to create a better whole. Yes, I understood what Deming said about it. I understood what Russ Acuff said about it. I still couldn't figure out why my system, that particular system that I had helped design and was trying to run effectively, it never worked right until and it wasn't so much the the thinking behind systems as much as it was the design of the system itself. And I just go back to that and I go, yeah, if I would have had those pieces to it, and the first mistake I made was putting myself in charge of that system. Okay, who owns the system? And I was the owner, but I was also the president of the company. I was spending half my time on the road visiting customers, and a brand new when we designed the system and the team that was there, it needed like daily nurturing, and I was just absent. And so the first big failure I had was assigning me as the system leader. I should have assigned someone else to be the system leader. We had no feedback report. I didn't know it was failing until it had failed. And then by then it was really hard to try to get people to try it again because they always all said, no, we tried that already. We're not going to do that again. Why waste our time? Um, And so it was there were a number of, there's no feedback. There were no reports being generated. We had a report that, on the board where we could track progress in the system, but none of the other, what are the behaviors? We had no behavioral measures. It was always, as Shingo would call it, a death certificate. That's what he called results reports, KPI, uh, the KPIs that he would look at people who measured KPIs and just go, all you were looking at is death certificates. And I go, okay, now that I understand that Shingo would call him that, I can understand why, because it's too late to do anything about it. And that's what I realized with that system is the only report we had that was being generated, it was too late. And all it showed was we weren't getting any better. And so I knew I could look at the report and go, we're not getting any better. Why not? We implemented the system so that we could get better. Instead, the system I'm talking about is a product, onboarding of new customers. When we'd sign a contract and we could start on the contract as soon as we had everything in place and we're ready to go. And we wanted to narrow that time so we could start billing the customer. They were ready. They signed the contract. They're willing to start paying us sooner, but it was taking us a long time to get all of the things together to be able to start their project. And so we were just wasting money by not getting it up sooner. And we were just taking too much time. And I'm trying to figure out how do we narrow that onboarding window? It's a flow problem. And I never did crack the nut. And now I can go back and say, I wish I had known what I know now because I could have cracked the nut. I didn't
Right.
have, so
So important. So, mm, you've had the chance now to work with a lot of leaders.
yes.
What would you say separates the ones who can navigate tension well from the ones who can't, right? Because the things that you were just saying there really require that ability. When you're the owner of the system, you're you've been trained to track KPIs, right? And that's kind of the standard expectation. Mm, what separates the ones who can go, oh, no, now I understand. If I'm getting a report just on the results, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
And that they would have to
So,
really be able to navigate some tension right there because it's counter to what they've been taught.
the principle that we have in the Shingo model is lead with humility. And there's two different aspects of that, obviously. There's the action verb, which is lead, and then there's the with humility, which is the object. And why do we phrase it that way? The big reason for the with humility is because that's how you show respect. And the respect every individual and lead with humility are intertwined. And if you respect people, that means you respect their opinion, you respect their input, you respect when they say this isn't a safe environment or this particular part of our operation is not safe. We need to do something about that. And the leader needs to be humble to the criticisms, to the ideas, to the data. If there's data that says you shouldn't be doing this way, the leader needs to be able to humble themselves and say, maybe I'm not right. Maybe that person is right, or this data is right, or whatever. And that's the openness to being able to improve is humility. If you already think you're the smartest and you're doing things the best, you're not open to improvement. And so we see organizations that have not so humble leaders not making not so great progress as a result.
Right. Right.
But there is still the role of the leader is to lead. There's certain things that only the leader can do. And that's, part of it is decide the direction of the whole organization, or the, leadership team can do. And part of it then is allocating resources and gathering the resources so that you can allocate those resources and so on. There are specific things that leaders have to be able to do. And that's part of leadership. So two parts to that. One is the object, which is with humility. And the reason we say that is because leaders need to be open to ideas, the ideas and suggestions for improvements that other people in the organization may make, or maybe even open to data. The data, they may believe one thing, but the data says something else, or whatever. Leaders need to be open to change. Otherwise, they'll never make any improvements. If they think everything is great and they're the smartest person, they don't need to listen to anybody. It's really hard for the organization to get any better if the leadership of the organization is not open to it. And so they need to be humble so that they can be open to improvement and enable that improvement to happen. But the other part to that is the action verb, which is lead, and leadership is something leaders have to do and only leaders can do. There's a number of things that only leaders can do. They're the ones that set, for example, the direction of the organization. They set the strategy. They're the ones that also have to get the resources within the organization, allocate those resources in a way that will drive improvement. And so those are things that, for example, only leaders can do. And so we focus on, when we say lead with humility, we're focusing on both of those aspects. That there are things you have to do as a leader that only you can do as a leader. And here are some of those unique things that only you can do as a leader. But you need to be open to what your people are telling you and the improvement ideas that they have and so on. The question of I don't remember the way you phrased it a moment ago, but of softness or whatever. What we have found is that leaders who are humble can be more demanding
Mm.
because if people realize they're being listened to and their opinions are respected and appreciated, then the leader can turn around and say, but Kristina, you can do better than that. Meaning, I think your idea is fine, but keep going, take it farther. And so we find that the humble leaders, the ones who truly grasp both aspects of leadership and humility, can be more demanding and stretch their organizations even more, push them to greater heights, because they realize that they've got all the people in the organization working to improve. It's not just dependent on a handful of people to try to drive the improvements, and they can get the organization to do much better. And we've seen that in the organizations that keep getting better and better after receiving a Shingo Prize. They and this is kind of counterintuitive, because in our world we talk about there's draining the reservoir. That's an analogy that Toyota came up with. Of, you see the rocks, so you drain the reservoir, you see the big rocks and you take care of those, and then you have smaller rocks and take care of those, and then you get down to the bottom of the reservoir and there's got little rocks that are down there, because you would have seen all the bigger rocks before. And so there's this sense that improvement is going to look like this, where it's a lot more at the beginning and then tapers off as time goes on. And what organizations that have been at this longer tell me, though, is after they see an inflection point, they get pretty steady improvements, and then they start getting even better and better at getting better. And I ask them why. And we've seen this in a number of organizations. So I ask them why. And their answer is because our people are trained better and they have gotten better at solving problems all by themselves. And so they don't have to wait for us to get involved. They just say, give me this and we'll do it. And they do it much faster and more efficiently than they ever did before. And so their improvements just, the opportunities never go away. But what's interesting is they get better and better at improving. And it's a wonderful thing to see. Even after 30 years, the organizations, the productivity rates are improving more than they had in the past. So that's why, and that's also a reason why leadership can stretch them. Because wait, these people, they don't even know what their upside is. So I tell leaders, don't be afraid. If you're open to ideas, don't be afraid to push them too, because
Mm.
because that's what the best leaders I've seen do.
I'm thinking about the progression both of the development of a leader as well as the development of an organization. And humility, leading with humility sounds very nuanced and
It,
complex.
it is. Dive into two quick common topics related to that. One is trust. How much trust do you have for people, and why do you have the trust for people? One of what we have found is the greater the trust in an organization, the greater their ability to improve and how quickly they can improve. And there is, I'm going to coin a term from Stephen M.R. Covey, who's a friend of mine, but he wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And there is a true speed to how quickly an organization can improve if the team acts like a team and they trust each other to do their own role, to do each specific role, and they also trust that somebody's going to come help me if I need help. You kind of see that in like a pit crew or a really great basketball or soccer team, where the team is greater than the sum of the parts. And it's because of that trust and the knowledge that not only do they have the skills to do what they're doing, but they also are going to go do the right thing, and I can count on them to do it. And I don't have to worry about it as a leader, or I don't have to worry about it as a team member. And that's an incredible level to get to, is when you have this trust that speeds up everything everybody's doing. And the second part of that is when we talk about respect every individual, it's not just listening to their ideas. It's not just physical safety. I can tell you, if people don't feel safe, they will not be worried about coming up with improvement ideas. They're going to worry about, how can I keep myself safe in an unsafe environment? And so that's the focus. I'll do my job. I'll keep myself safe. I'll go home tonight. But will I make any improvements? If the organization doesn't support safety, then they will not make improvements. That's true of psychological safety too. And it's really the culture you build within the organization that creates that psychological safety. And that will not happen without humble leaders, because as soon as somebody has an idea and it gets shot down or criticized or whatever by one of their bosses, are they ever going to try to do it again? The answer is no. And so if that psychological safety is necessary for them to be able to say, I think we should do this, and say it to one of the bosses, with the risk of they're going to get shot down and their career is over or whatever it may be. And so you've got to be able to have both trust and a psychologically safe environment that enable. So that's why I say those two principles, lead with humility and respect every individual, they go hand in hand, because without them working together, you can't drive improvement in the organization. All the improvements, if you can't drive improvements from the team, you might be able to drive improvements from the leaders or just the engineers or whatever, but you won't have the engagement of the team. And that's when it really happens. When I say the organizations that kept getting better and better and then had that inflection point, what happened there was the team really got so good at making improvements that they didn't have to rely on leadership anymore. They didn't have to rely on engineering anymore. They could just go make their own improvements because they were so good at making improvements, they knew what
Yeah,
to do.
yeah. Um, and if there is there a specific moment when you can sense that this culture is going to hold versus one that's going to slide back into old habits?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You can sense it. It's when they drive the leaders out that come in and try to disrupt it, and the culture is so strong, and the systems are so embedded in what they do, so that they know what the right behaviors are. The systems are driving the right behaviors. They know what the purpose of the organization is, and they know how to do it. That if a mismatch joins the team, that mismatch quickly is identified by everybody, and the mismatching person is then either has to change or leave. And I'll be really clear. There's a lot of people in the world who would not fit into Toyota's culture, as an example. And that's okay. That's okay, because all Toyota needs is for the people who join Toyota to fit into their culture. And not everybody is cut out to do certain things. You know, I personally would have a real hard time living on a Toyota production line. I just couldn't do that. I couldn't live life. This may only be something a few people understand what I say. I could not live life in tack time. It would drive me crazy. I love to watch it. I love to see how people behave. I love to see the actions they go through. I love to see how it all works. I love to see how a factory can become a symphony because everything is going in the same beat all the time. I could not live in that beat. So people don't fit for various reasons into different organizations, and they may be really great organizations and still not fit. It's okay. What the system can do, though, the culture, when it becomes so embedded, is one person may join it and go, "This is great. I want to work here the rest of my life. I really believe in this, and I fit." And somebody else may be a really great person and join it and go, "This isn't for me." It's okay. Then find what is for you. Help, and I think as leaders, we need to help those people who aren't going to fit, either figure out how to fit, or if they can't, help them move on to something that's better for them and helps them reach their potential in whatever position they want to go elsewhere.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you for all this, Ken. I have one last question.
Yeah.
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 What is a question that I haven't asked you yet that you would like to be asked?
Ooh, let's where do I find meaning? Let's talk about that. Is that all right? Where do I find meaning? I find that in our world, the world of improvement, and the people that are dedicated to improving their organizations, because those are the ones that I talk to all the time. And I was one of those people. I was always trying to improve the organizations that I was a production manager, then a plant manager, then for most of my career in industry, I was president. From the last 21 years of my career, I was running three different companies. But always I was a disciple of improvement. And then when I got involved with the Shingo Institute, it was like, this is kind of like my dream job. Like all the experiences I had in industry, I wish I would have known then what I know now. But now it's like I can go teach people and help them learn it in a better way than I had to learn it through the school of hard knocks, or making mistakes and then trying to figure out take me years to figure out what I did wrong. I've got a better way of teaching people so that they can at least get better faster. And that's why in the mission of the Shingo Institute, we say, um, where the first part of the phrase is all about, we improve the process of improvement. We're all about that. Help people get better faster. But what is interesting is all of our staff members, our board members over the years, and so on, they all agree with that, improve the process of improvement. But when I ask them why it's meaningful to them, and same is true for me and the staff that I work with on a day-to-day basis, we all have different reasons. And I'll just share mine. Mine's personal. I find great meaning in helping people just thrive at work. I go into a factory, I can look at people's faces and I can say they hate it here. Or I can look at their faces and say they are thriving here. And you can tell by just the excitement they bring or don't bring, the looks on their faces that they have or don't have. And it's crushing to me to go into a place where people are required to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again and are treated like they're no better than a robot. And it is just thrilling to me to go in and see people who are so excited about their work that they're doing and what meaning it can have in their lives. And to me, that's just is so fulfilling. So why do I do this? I want to see everybody in the world thrive at work.
Yes.
And that's a personal thing. I don't know where that comes from. I just enjoyed it with my own employees. I enjoy it now when I go on a Shingo site visit or when I go visit a company that we're taking a study tour to or something like that. I see the thriving or I see the crushing, and I either and I'm really happy about the one and I'm just so sad about the other. And to me, I want everybody to be able to thrive work. It's so important to us in our lives here on earth because we have to work, we have to support ourselves, and we spend so much of our lives at it. Everybody deserves that opportunity to work doing something that they love and thrive at. And that's where I find meaning personally. But it converges with other people on the idea of let's improve the process of improvement and help people get better faster.
Yeah. Well, Ken, you and I are really aligned in that way. So thank you so much for sharing that. As I was listening to you, I had this feeling or this idea, right? Is um, when I'm looking at an organization where the people are thriving, or I'm listening to the leaders who are saying, I really want my people to want to be here. I really want my people to thrive at work, right? Uh, versus leaders who don't notice or maybe don't care, right? I'm imagining that those leaders aren't thriving themselves either. I don't know if that's true or not, but I am imagining that um, when the organization is thriving and the people uh, that I'm serving as a leader are thriving, that's also a reflection of how I feel as a human being in my own humanity,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Um, so many things that you said are really going to stick with me. In addition to what we just talked about around meaning, the other one is the measurement of KPIs and looking at results. It's already too late. And as a leader, I really need to understand what's happening before we get to the results, whether that it's in the behavior, whether it's in the system, whether it's in the relationship and the trust, right? For people to be able to say, hey, this behavior is out of whack with our purpose, and to be willing to engage to improve the system so that it becomes more and more attuned and more aligned with the purpose of our existence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who wants to go deeper into your work, Ken, where will they find you?
Shingo.org.
Shingo.org. All right.
SHINGO.org.
Great. Thank you. So that's a great resource for those of you who want to thrive at work and thrive in your leadership. This is Grounded Engagement, Liberating Leadership. I'm Kristina Katayama. And if this conversation moved something in you, share it with a leader who needs to hear it. We'll be back next week with another leader to talk about turning moments of tension into doorways for learning and repair.